I'm thrilled. Eldridge, you did a wonderful job of generating an audience that's new for us. And so I'm excited about that. I am Audrey Seidman, and I'm one of the organizers of our circles. Gert Johnson, who you could find in one of these boxes, she's up on the top row for me, is the founder of our Interfaith Story Circle that is getting nigh on to 30 years old. And pre-COVID, we would meet in different houses of faith, different cultural institutions, so that we could both experience being in each other's homes, per se, and tell stories on different themes. Our theme tonight is lessons in character. I first met Eldridge when we were doing a panel together for AARP. And I'm just fascinated by what she's done in her life and what she continues to do, especially in writing and storytelling. So let me tell you a little bit about Eldridge and what our theme tonight, is about the virtues. Where is it do we learn about the virtues, the traits that we're supposed to emanate? Is it from our parents? Is it from our teachers? Is it from our spiritual leaders, our reading? How is it that we absorb these? And if you have a story that resonates with this topic tonight, I want to invite you to tell it. Even if you have never told a story in front of an audience before, I promise you, this is a very kind and welcoming audience. Let me tell you a little bit also about how we operate so I don't forget. We show our appreciation by listening, and then we rub our hands together to sort of say, thank you, take a breath. We don't discuss the stories at all. We just let them be. We take a breath, and then we invite the next teller. So after Eldridge tells her story, we will move on to open the circle to you. And you may have come just to listen, but you may get inspired by something you hear. So just be open to that. The other thing I'm going to invite you all to do is mute now when you're not speaking. So if you would all do that, I would appreciate it. So any background noise in your home, people talking, dogs barking, bells ringing, we won't hear. So our guest teller tonight, Eldridge McClaney, who many of you on here already know her, has been a long-term educator, teacher in Rochester and Buffalo districts. She's certified in English, administration, and supervision. She has a master's and a BA in education. She's a veteran Toastmaster, an experienced storyteller, and the author of 2 books, which I heard some people here are already using in the classroom. One is I Go Back, Stories from a Southern Upbringing. The other one is No Kinfolk No More. She is the parent of 3, the grandparent of 6, and the great-grandparent of 4 children. So I want to welcome Eldridge. You may choose to highlight her by going to your view on the top and put speaker. So she will be large for you. And if the rest of you mute, then you won't become the speaker. So I may have to mute some of you if I can. But Eldridge, we're going to ask you to start off with an opening reflection or prayer, and then please launch into your story.
Very well. Good evening, and I just want to say thank you, Mrs. Audrey, for inviting me to participate on this program of Interfaith Circle. It's really, I'm very appreciative. I'm going to begin by with a poem, and the title of it is "I Turn to You," and it is found in Walking in Faith poems, and it's by Sally Esclees, Eccles, Esclees. And the title of it is "I Turn to You." I'm going to read a couple of stanzas, and then I begin my storytelling. When I am lost in despair, with troubling thoughts in the air, I turn to you. When I am alone with an empty heart and no one to share my thoughts, I turn to you. When prayers have not been answered and dreams have not been fulfilled, I turn to you. I will stop there. The title of my story tonight is The Big Meeting. The big meeting and the revival are synonymous. They mean the same. So some people may say big meeting, some might say revival. Beginning my story. In rural Alabama, where my family and I attend worship service, the big meeting was a celebration and an honored ritual. Truly, it was an enjoyable event for everyone, including us children. One thing we children liked most about the big meeting was on that Sunday, they fed everybody. Those ladies would come to church with their trunks packed to the capacity with all kinds of food. And I said trunks, not cardboard boxes, because cardboard box was not in vogue in the 1940s, mid 40s in Pigeon Creek. Those ladies would have vegetables, chicken stuffing, cakes of all kinds, pies of all kinds, egg custard, various kinds of meat, beef, pork, goat, lamb, sheep. They would have their trunks full of them. Then, after the morning worship service, those ladies would go outside in the courtroom in the court area, where the men had set up long tables, probably 2 or 3 tables together, and made it possible so that when the ladies came out, they would be spreading the food all over those tables. Now, we young folks thought that those tables, that food was set just for us. But take my word for it, anybody could go and get food off that table without any consequences, without anybody saying a word or reprimanding. But we children, we helped ourselves. We ate plenty. During the big meeting, the front row pew in the deacons section of the church was always designated as the mourner's bench. And just before the minister get up to preach, he would command that all of the children under 12 years old come up front and sit on the mourner's bench. like little lamb led to the slaughter. We children moved. We sat on the bench. And he would preach, give me your hand and give God your heart. Well, we children knew that we were not going to give him our hand because he was a stranger to us. And our parents had warned us over and over repeatedly, do not talk to strangers, do not socialize with strangers. So the minister was a stranger, and we were not going to give him our hand. And that was during the time when children really accepted and acknowledged the fact that parents knew best. Therefore, we didn't give him our hand. Now, as I said, the revival, the big meeting was a celebration. And it was a celebration because it was almost like a family reunion, but it wasn't a family reunion. It had much to do with bonding. When we grew up together on the Mona's bench, those of us that sat on that Mona's bench, we bonded, we connected. And every year we would return home almost just to reconnect with some of the friends and family that we grew up with sitting on the Mona's bench. Hey, there's Marvin. Marvin enters the barber shop where his old lifetime buddy grew up with Jack, sitting in the barber's chair, getting his hair cut. He said, hey man, how you doing? Are you home for the big meeting? He said, yes. Jack said, yes, I wouldn't miss it for money. He said, Jack, I've been wondering, what is it about this big meeting that catapult us all the way from Niagara Falls, New York, back home to Pigeon Creek, Alabama, every year? What is it? What is it about this big meeting that brings us home? Jack said, Marvin, those meetings taught us something. They solidified within us strong character development, an extension of what our parents were trying to instruct us. Not only that, they created strong Christian values where they taught us how to agree to disagree. Yet we were labeled sinners in need of salvation. And then we were taught that we could not join the church until we was 12 years old. Our parents had told us 12 years old is the age of accountability. And accountability meant that we had to be 12 years old because we couldn't differentiate between the good and the bad. We didn't know. So parents said 12 years old is the age of accountability. And that accountability had to do with the fact that, number one, you have to know and be accountable to everyone. Our parents said, you have to respect people. And that respect is a two-way street. You can't disrespect someone else without, first of all, disrespecting yourself. Parents accepted the fact that we must be trained And it seemed as if the minister had a goal in mind, and his goal was to make sure that he got as many children from the mourner's bench to convert, so that in the end, on Friday afternoon, when the baptismal time, he would have a large group of converts to baptize. But the parents had a goal in mind too. And that goal was that they wanted every one of their children to know what it means to be a Christian. Parents would teach us children how teach us children through the Baptist Training Union, the BTU, missionary, Red Circle, Sunday school, and any other youth ministry that may have come up. They wanted to make sure that we were well trained. The parents said to us children, you must be humble at all times, and you must learn how to accept and treat each other with humility from the beginning of inside and out. You have to be humble. They train us to be kind, to be honest, to be truthful, and peaceful. As we move through as we move through the ministry, the parents were not going to allow us to do it any old way we wanted to. We had to follow the rules. And the rules were do as you were told to do. Eventually, when the minister eventually the parents often explained to us that the children explained to us why the children had to understand accountability is because when one person was 11 years old, she became converted, leaped up off of her seat, gave the minister her hand, and her sister, a little 9-year-old sister, followed her. And when the minister said, "And why do you want to join the church?" The little 9-year-old said, "I don't know. I just followed my sister." But gradually, when those sinners, those little children became adults, they decided, well, if the ministers feel this way about us, I wonder what does he think about those who have committed the backslider, those who are not doing the right thing, the backsliders, the drunkards, those who mistreat the family. Is that why are we sinners in the first place? Why are we sinners? The kids were really concerned about that. Why are we labeled sinners? And eventually, they said to us, the children began to question and say, well, what is the purpose of the big meeting? Is the purpose designed to bring in only little children? Or is the purpose of the big meeting designed to rejuvenate the membership and provoke them to action as members? Those little children decided that we're not sinners. What in the world are the preacher calling us sinners, and here these people, older folks, are doing whatever they want to do? Well, anyway, whenever whenever the preacher decided that these sinners that they were sinners, and that the deaconesses sitting across the street, across the room, and in the amen corner was egging the preacher on. He was preaching so hard, perspiration was rolling down his cheeks. And the deaconess was saying, preach, pastor, preach. Preach, pastor, preach. Amen, amen. Amen. Then finally, somebody came in the church and said, one of the mules that had pulled away from the branch where the man who drove the family to church had pulled away, the mule had pulled away from the branch, and unknowingly to them at the moment, that mule had fallen in the baptismal pool. And when that mule fell in the baptismal pool, and the person that came into church and told them, they had no idea where the mule was. They looking for the mule. Finally, they heard the mule thrashing around in the water. As he was thrashing around in the water, they realized that the mule was in the water, in the baptismal pool. And then they got busy pushing and pulling. The mule could not get out on its own. So they pushed and they pulled. And finally, they pulled the mule out of the water. And when they pulled the mule out of the water, somebody ran back in the church and said, oh, we found the mule. So deaconesses began to praise even more when they found the mule. Glory, glory, glory. Hey, hey, glory, glory, glory. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And when they finally got that mule out and were baptizing and baptized, the little children, all baffled and not knowing what in the world was going on, finally said, well, is the mule a sinner? He asked one of the little children asked the elders, was the mule a sinner in need of salvation? And then another child said, well, did the water wash away the mule's sin? And that story is how we learn how to be humble, humility, and growing up in the South and that church, being baptized and as a believer. That's the way our parents ended up training us. The end.